Back in 1992, it was summertime, and my friend David called me on a regular basis from Seattle. He had moved out there because he had moved out there to be with his brother who sold hot tub covers. He was a nuclear engineer in the Navy, but he had left the Navy and he had gone out to Seattle, and he seemed to be lonely. He kept calling me, collect, and said, hey, don't you want to come out and at least spend some time out here? And I said, well, yeah, but I said, you remember, we're both penniless. And he said, well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So this happened for several weeks. And finally, on one Monday night, he said, hey, I need you to pick me up from the airport. And I said, yeah, I know. David was a joker. He probably still is. He joked about everything. And I said, okay, what is it this time? I tried to dissuade him from any of this talk before. He says, well, you told me that if I ever fly out there and help you drive out here, that you'll go with me. I said, yeah. He says, so you got to pick me up. I said, it's 10:30 at night. I said, you're telling me that you're in an airport somewhere. He says, yeah, I'm at St. Louis Airport. I'll be there at 1 o'clock. I said, okay, you're serious. He said, I'm dead serious. I said, you better not be joking. He said, I'm serious. So I talked with my parents, and behold, I said, I'm going to leave. I'm going to drive out to Seattle beginning tonight. And so I went to St. Louis, lost my way because I'd never been out of the state of Illinois and as far as on my own. I was scared to death, didn't know what was going on, had to stop at a convenience store to ask directions for the airport. I didn't have Google, I didn't have Google Maps, didn't have anything but a Rand McNally that I couldn't read in the dark because my little Datsun 280ZX didn't have lights, didn't even have air conditioning. And so there I am at the airport. Finally, I found the airport and thought, man, I'm safe now. And I'm waiting for somebody to get off of a plane, and I don't see anybody. And finally, there comes my friend. He's got a lot longer hair than he did when I knew him. And he said, hey, what's up? How are you doing? It's good to see you. And I'm like, what are we doing? And he's like, oh, no, you know me. He said, don't worry about it. We're gonna go out there. I got a job for you and everything. This was after I was out of college, blah, 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 blah. And he said, we're going to have a great time. He said, don't worry about it. My brother's got a job set up for you. Everything's going to be good. And I said, okay. This is what I told my parents, and so better be good. Meanwhile, my little brother, who is listening to this right now and who was, I believe, about 11 or 12 at the time, was bawling. I did have it on. So he was bawling, and I just broke my heart that he was, that he had a problem, with me leaving. I left my little brother at home. Well, I'm on my way to, I wanted to tell you, this is Illinois. This is the historic district. Okay? Cornfields. That's what I grew up in. And so you can see all of the creative influences that I had as a child came from, that's right, the yellow stuff that is everywhere. So I left the yellow stuff, and then I went into the Missouri mountains for the first time in my life. And boy, that was something else, because this is the first time I'd seen anything probably higher than, 50, 60 feet. And going through Illinois, you're going very flat. There's a glacial runoff there, and that's why Illinois is so fertile, and that's why all the soybean production, that's why all of these different things are happening in Illinois. Scandals, ADM scandals with the lysine production, Japanese price fixing, all of these different kind of weird things going on in Illinois that really contribute to bad movies like the one Matt Damon made with George Clooney about the informant. Okay? So I'm here in Missouri, and David and I are talking, and I'm like, what are we going to do? There's a lot of time we got to get out there. I don't know. He's like, I don't know. He just wanted to sleep in the back of my car. It wasn't very big. There was all kinds of luggage. It was cramping around. He couldn't figure it. So up and down the mountains, he's just like, just let me sleep for a while. I've had a long day. I'm like, I got to drive. I'm not going to let him drive. It's an old car. I didn't even check the brakes before I went out. This is a 1979 Datsun 286. I don't know if this thing's going to make it or not. I don't even know if the tires are good. But here we are going through some mountains. And guess what we see right here? We go through Kansas, and I see cornfields. I was like, oh, that's Illinois. We're back in Illinois. And then I was like, no, it's not Illinois, because you know what? Illinois is a lot flatter than Kansas. Just most people don't know, because Illinois never gets any press. I mean, Kansas, everybody who travels through the United States, they say, you know how flat it was as we drove through Kansas? It was so bad. Everything we saw was the same thing, just flat, flat, flat. I said, you've never been through Central Illinois, have you? Well, no. I said, it's flatter than that. I lived there. Kansas was one of the most boring trips as well. So I was like, I was at home. I'm okay. I just endure. That's why I have the stamina that I have. Kansas. Then I got into Denver in Colorado. Never been to Denver. I was like, this is going to be awesome. But we're not going to go into Denver. We're just going to go around Denver and go up to Salt Lake City. So I got to see Rocky Mountains. I got to see all kinds of things. I'm like, this is awesome. This is a different planet. How did we land here? What is happening right now? I've never seen anything like this. It's so big. Look, I can see for like hundreds of miles. In Illinois, you see, what you see? Cornfields, right? You can't see but maybe a mile of cornfields, right? Colorado, I'm in the mountains. We're going to go up Salt Lake City. Well, first of all, we got to go through Wyoming, because you go through Wyoming, and that's where you have these big fence-looking structures on the side of the highway. Big fence-looking structures. I'm like, what is that? And everywhere you go, it's like just huge, these big fence structures. And I said, I don't know what that is. I said, are those like windbreakers? Somebody said, no, those are drift breakers. I don't know. I've never been to Wyoming. Snow drifts? Yeah, snow drifts across the highway. We got to keep snow. We got to break the snow somehow. Okay, cool. That's cool with me. I thought it was a really cool place, because all this vegetation, trees. I'd never seen that tall. That was awesome. It was just a little bit of Wyoming. And then Salt Lake City. We actually stayed in Salt Lake City, downtown, right across the street from where the Utah Jazz play. I was like, this is unbelievable. I'm from Illinois. Here we are, Utah. And I tell you what, we left Utah the next day, and I thought to myself, I don't know if my car is going to be able to make it. We're going up a mountain, and boy, let's downshift into second gear, because it doesn't seem like I got the torque. I only got a inline V6, and there's both of us are not that heavy, but I mean, come on, this is hard to get up. And so we keep going, no, first gear. I'm going in first gear up a 2-mile, seems like, incline in Utah, and I just am flabbergasted by all of these trucks and semis that are going 80+ mile an hour. Now I know why everybody has 4-wheel trucks, 4-wheel Jeep Grand Cherokees. Everybody out there has something capable of going around, and yeah, you get it. And so it was pretty scary going through Utah. But then I went through Idaho, and it was kind of peaceful, because it was at night, and we went through Laramie, and there's nothing really there. And then we went through Oregon, which was also at night, and we went through the corner of Oregon. It was just really dark. I really couldn't see anything, but I know that Jason's from Oregon. I know that the Vances are from Oregon. I know they know what's there, and it's really beautiful. And they see all this stuff all the time, and I'm just like, man, you guys are so lucky that you didn't grow up in cornfields, right? And so finally I get to Washington, and we get to Seattle, and we stop in the city that David lived in, which is called Puyallup. And immediately I'm turning on a TV somewhere, because it's Friday night, Saturday night, and I'm hearing something about Joe Carter hitting a home run for the Blue Jays. And I'm like, this is awesome. I was rooting for this kind of thing like that. And I was like, okay, David, what are we going to do? Where's the job? He said, well, I kind of fibbed about that. I said, you did what? He said, my brother doesn't know that I'm gone. And he's been trying to get a hold of me, and he's really mad, and there is no job. And I said, so you're saying that I drove all the way out here to Seattle and I have no future, at least immediate? Yeah. I said, okay, I have no money. I said, I'll have to, Western Union was the only thing I knew that I could get money from my parents. Yeah. So I went to Pike's Market. I went and did all these other things. I got stuck on hills at stoplights because I have a stick shift and the clutch won't do that well. All these kind of different things going on. And that was a lot of it. I got to go to Puget Sound. Everything was awesome. It was just awesome. But it was really bad too because I had to leave. I had to leave pretty soon, in 2 weeks. Kids, I want you to see if you can answer these questions. Kids, meaning Luke, that's one. You're one of those that I'm targeting today. All right. How many states did we drive through? That's what I thought. How many times did I mention cornfields? How many? Somebody hold up their fingers, whatever. Yeah, wrong. How long did it take to get to Seattle? Oh, very good. 5 days. Which state had a mountain that required shifting into first gear? Oh, very good. Very good. Which state had snowdrift breakers? Montana? Wrong. Wyoming. Very good. What city near Seattle did we stop in? Very good. Some of you have heard of it. What time of the year did we make the trip? What? World Series. Oh, there you go. You were listening. Very good. Okay, so I used to get stressed out in high school and college, especially seminary in Lubbock. In Lubbock, we had like 26 or 30 credit hours per semester. So we crammed 4 years of what they said was education into 2 years. And I got stressed out because there wasn't enough time for exchanges in the learning process. In other words, I just had to sit like every other student and listen. And I may have had a question now and then, maybe like every couple of weeks, you ask a question during class time, but generally instructors did not let you ask a bunch of questions. Why? Because you could be there forever. And one of the most difficult things that was for me was that I learned through these exchanges, these processes of, I'm going to ask you a question that's important to me, and then you respond. Listening is difficult. Now you think, this isn't biblical. Just wait. Listening is extremely difficult for everybody, especially when it's not about me. I don't care about the story that I told you today. I've told some of you some of this stuff. That's beside the point. When I have something on my mind, generally people are like this. They tune out. I could see through the story some of you kind of tuning out, going, That's on purpose. I intended for your reaction to be that way, for it to be painful, for it to be frustrating. Why? Because this is what it's like when we read our Bibles that are not written directly to my questions. It is hard to read the Bible, and we are good Bible readers, but we can be much better listeners. This is the challenge with all of Scripture, is that it requires a patient listening ear, especially when it doesn't involve what I think I need to be concerned about. It is a life mode, listening is. For example, let me just ask one quick question. You don't have to answer, but you get the point. When did the Old Testament become old? Something should be simple that we should be able to answer for anybody walking in saying, hey, I just have one question for you. When did the Old Testament become old? How do you explain that? Well, I'm not going to explain it today. That's not the purpose of my lesson. But you get the point. The point is reading minds is impossible. Now, to prove to you that I'm not a listening expert and I'm not like up here bragging or something like I'm a better listener than you, just ask my wife, okay? She knows certifiably that I am a bad listener. Or rather, let's refine it. She would not be that unkind to me. She would say, you're just like everybody else. You listen for the things that you think are important to you. When she tells me her schedule, which is irregular every week, I go, okay. Why? Because it's different every week. I don't know. I'm not keeping track. You're thinking, how could you be married to somebody that long and you guys don't have this figured out? Well, because it's different every week and things happen. I know when she's probably going to work this week, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe she gets called in this next Sunday, but I've had to work at that for like 16 years. If you're not married to a nurse or someone in the medical profession, maybe you get it in some other way. It is hard to figure things out, right? So reading minds is impossible. We need to be better listeners. And what I mean by being better listeners is not hearing more words. What Jesus means by this is being able to understand and comprehend what is going on. And so everybody's good at this. We all need to be better. That's not the point. Jesus had people that were very good listening about what they wanted to listen to. And that's why he was killed. They listened to exactly what they wanted to listen to. But they didn't listen to him. They tried to read God's mind. No, you got to listen to what's coming out of the mouth of the Messiah. Reading minds is impossible. How many of you believe that? If you do, and I know you do, then what do we need to do to improve our listening? We have to have exchanges. We have to have more and stuff. We have to have communication on a constant basis, especially when it comes to the Word of God. Mark chapter 4, verse 9, Jesus finishes his parable of the sower, and he says, he who has ears to hear, or has an ear to hear, let him what? Hear. What is Jesus saying? Do you have good quality ears? Yes and no. He's not talking about the level of volume that he's speaking from. He's talking about the fact that if you listen to this parable, this is the key parable, which he says, which if you understand this one and you unlock this parable right here, you will understand all the other parables. The rest of Mark chapter 4. Not the parables, the rest of what he says and explains. It takes a lot of listening to Jesus. Jesus is not American. Jesus was a Jewish man, and he lived in a Jewish context within a Roman Empire context, within a Greco-Roman world context. And when we go back to our Bibles and we pull out passages and things like that, that's what Jesus is saturated in, is not a modern context. We have a historical context that we always need to develop, and it has nothing to do with cornfields. Maybe. I wanted to make it painful for you to listen to this sermon. Not because I'm trying to be mean, but because it's a habit that I get out of, and I think that Jesus says, hey, don't just do work and move on. Don't just go through the motions. Stop. What did I say? Listen. You're not hearing it. You're not hearing it. Slow down. This is part of the challenge that I have. I have the energy and the will I just want to explain everything. I want to get everything out of my head. I want to tell you 1,000 things I think I know. That's not helpful. Listen. He who has an ear to hear, let him hear. Revelation chapter 2, verse 7. Revelation will have this phrase 7 times. Beginning in chapter 2, verse 7, you have it with Ephesus. He who has an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. As we go through the study of Revelation, and I'm not saying that even you have to be interested in that, but everything in every book is always going to be relevant one way or another, whether or not we are directly hearing it or not. Revelation is going to have some application just like Ephesians would, just like any of the classes that we teach. Everything requires paying attention to, especially when it doesn't have anything to do, when we think it doesn't have much to do with us. That's the challenge of listening to God. A lot of you are married. Okay, I'll end with this. A lot of you are married. When I met Cindy and I went home after our first date, I called a friend in Texas and I said, I found the one. I found the one. And I was 36 years old. That's like in kid years, that's ancient, right? 36 years old, had not been married. Wanted to find one. So what happened was when I met Cindy, and then we kept talking, and we got this, vibe like this is it. This is the one. And so what I did was I went and I got her an engagement ring, and then I proposed to her. I surprised her, and she was so excited, and I was like, I'm so excited. This is the moment. This is the moment. This is it. This is where we decide, we're going to be husband and wife. And she said, yes, I love you, all this kind of stuff, right? And it was wonderful. And then I said, man, thank you. I'm going to head out now because, we made it. So, I want to wish you the best. We finally got to experience that moment. And it was awesome. I mean, did you see how that happened? I knelt down. You were surprised with that shock. It was like cool. I wish we would have videoed that. And, I was like, it's all cool now. Let's just go. All right. So I'm headed out. And she's like, is that the end of I said, yeah, that's the only thing I was here for. That's the only reason I pursued you and talked to you. Now, of course that didn't happen, right? You're listening. Of course that didn't happen. Why is Ty so painful? I hope I don't treat God like that. I wanted to meet you all my life. I've been waiting for this moment. Jesus, thank you so much. I'll see you. All right, man. Yeah, you're good. You're awesome. Awesome. Good. I'll see you later. All right. That was cool, man. I need to tell people this. Yeah, that maybe. He's kind of strange. I don't know. Are we listening to God like we would our spouse? It's very difficult for Cindy and I to listen to each other. There's a lot of stuff, in life. Life stuff throws stuff at you all the time. And you're like, I can't handle it. You start crying. Like, stop talking to me. It's too much, right? You're at home, you do that. It's like Luke said, hey, I need homework help. Da, da, da. I'm like, everything. We don't quit. God is not a trophy in the sense that, man, I got to experience that one time. Listening is a mode of life with God. And if you've been listening at all in the past couple of years, thank you for your support and your kindness and your love and your generosity toward me. This is now, what is today, 24th? This is 4 days after Howard's birthday, because Howard's birthday was the day I started, August 20th, 2023. And so I am happy to have been a part of this. I'm not leaving. It's just, So I'm excited always about the future because of what the potential God has for all of us, not just as individuals, but as a body of Christ, to win people to Jesus. But in order to do that, and just as well as I do, if I have a neighbor that needs the gospel, and maybe they think they got it, I don't know, but whatever, I'm going to have to do a lot of listening. I'm going to have to do a lot of listening. Not a lot of, I did this, you need to do that. I need to do a lot of listening. And so that's hard to do. Let's pray to God that we become better at it. Or at least, if you want to take away from today's sermon, pray that Ty gets better at it. Because we want this relationship with God and with one another to build and thrive because of God's goodness and His love for us. We know how much He loves us. We know how much Jesus did for us on the cross and what He continues to do for us and where we're going. He answers our questions of why we're here and who we are and where we're going. And this is what everybody on the planet wants, but they answer it in different ways because they don't necessarily listen. It's one of the most difficult things a human can do. He who has an ear to hear, listen. And if you've been here for any length of time, you know what I'm about ready to ask. If you need to be immersed into Jesus Christ, baptized into Jesus, I'll give you one passage and then we'll have Eddie come up and lead us in song. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 18 through 22. Peter is talking about something that you and I would probably never think about because we weren't born in an ancient culture that had beliefs about the underworld. Hades, Mot, the death realm, Sheol, all of these things, hell, whatever you want to call it. The ancient world had a place where it says that Jesus went and preached to the spirits in prison. Interesting passage, I know. Believe it or not, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 21, Peter is referencing baptism, not as a church idea, religious idea, but as a God idea about dying and being raised again. Going into the underworld, through the underworld, like Jesus supposedly did, and coming out with newness of life. And he calls it having a clean conscience. And he says, baptism now saves you, not the removal of filth from the flesh, but the pledge of a good conscience toward God through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Peter sounds old-fashioned if it's just me reading it as an uninitiated reader of the Bible. Peter knows what he's talking about. If you need to be baptized into Christ, that's important. Do that. That is where you become a new creature. That is where God raises you to walk in newness of life. If you're struggling with sin, well, we're all in the same boat. And so we need to encourage one another and help one another and pray for one another. That is always the offer as well in the invitation. This is what it is, church is for us, is receiving one another, listening and encouraging and helping as much as we can. Forgive me if I get excited at times and it comes across in a way that maybe you don't like. If you do like it, go ahead and tell me and write it on Facebook. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just saying, I hope that it comes across clearly about listening to Jesus and to God. If you have a need this morning, Eddie's going to lead us in a song. And if you wish, please stand.